Hello, everyone. My name is Kathy Pereira, and I'm the Director of Access Transit Service Delivery at Coast Mountain Bus Company. Thank you for joining us for this virtual info session. As always, we'd like to begin today's session with a land acknowledgement. The TransLink enterprise acknowledges, respects, and celebrates the Indigenous nations on whose territories we are fortunate to live, work, operate, and serve. We also recognize that in the planning and managing of the region's transportation system, we have a role to play in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Through TransLink's investigation into the cyber attack, it recently came to light that customers who purchased TaxiSavers by check have been affected. For those of you who recently received breach notification letters in mail, our goal is to provide you with as much information as possible on how this incident may impact you and how you can protect yourself against potential risks. I'm hosting today's session because I'm responsible for Access Transit Service Delivery, and one of the many areas that it encompasses is the TaxiSaver program. Over the course of my career at TransLink and Coast Mountain Bus, I've had the opportunity to meet many of our customers and get to know some of them on a personal level. That's why I felt it was important for me to join this session today and help share as much information as possible with you, our customers. I want to thank you for tuning in to watch this virtual info session. Please feel free to invite friends, family, or caregivers to watch it with you or on their own time. During this call, you'll hear from Gigi Chen Ko, TransLink's interim CEO, and Danny Timmons, a national cybersecurity expert at MNP LLP, one of the largest business advisory firms in the country. Near the end of the session, members of TransLink's leadership team will answer some questions that might be top of mind for you. In addition to the questions answered during the session, we have also included a detailed list of frequently asked questions at the bottom of this website. If you still have remaining questions after watching today's session and reading our frequently asked questions, you can email cyberincident@translink.ca. Or if you prefer to speak with someone on the telephone, you can call our TransLink Incident Response Center at 1-855-731-3288. We're committed to answering every question we receive. To get us started, I'll now turn things over to Gigi Chen Ko.
Thank you, Kathy, and hello, everyone. My name is Gigi Chen Kuo, and I am the interim CEO of TransLink. I want to start by saying that all of us at TransLink deeply regret this incident ever took place. First, let me give you a bit of background on exactly what happened. In December 2020, TransLink was the victim of a sophisticated cyber attack during which criminals illegally accessed our company's computer network. As soon as the access was detected, our IT team took swift and decisive action to shut down our computing systems in order to contain the threat. We also immediately launched an investigation, calling in experts as well as law enforcement authorities to help us understand how the attack happened and determine to what extent sensitive personal information may have been unlawfully accessed. This investigation has been a complex and time-consuming process that has taken months to complete. It involved extensive forensic IT analysis, the use of e-discovery tools, and manual data review processes. Our investigation is now complete. In the first few months of the investigation, it was discovered that the criminals accessed a restricted confidential folder related to employee payroll and benefits. Once we discovered this, we quickly sent letters to the affected individuals. At that time, our investigation hadn't yet produced any evidence that sensitive personal information beyond those of employees had been accessed. Unfortunately, as the investigation continued, new evidence has been uncovered, and we recently discovered the attackers accessed a restricted confidential folder containing information from personal checks that had been written to purchase TaxiSaver vouchers. The people whose names are listed as account holders on those personal checks have been mailed what we call breach notification letters. The letter explains what specific information was involved, such as name, address, and bank account number as printed on the check, and how those impacted can access 2 years of complimentary credit monitoring services, which will be explained in more detail momentarily. Now, some of you might be wondering why you received a breach notification letter when you're not a TaxiSaver customer. In some instances, it's a family member, a friend, or a care provider of a customer in our Access Transit program who wrote the check. So the people who wrote the checks are not always the customers. So what does this mean for you? It's possible the attackers may have downloaded or copied an image of one of your payment checks. However, as I noted earlier, we don't know exactly what information they took out of our system, but regardless, we're letting you know that this is a possibility. The front of the check does have your name, address, and bank account number on it. In order to access your bank account, a person would typically need to know your unique banking personal identification number, or PIN, which isn't printed on a check. This is important to know so that you can be extra careful about protecting your PIN in the future. In fact, banks recommend that you never give your banking PIN to anyone, especially if someone is asking for it over the internet or telephone. Even if the person calling says they are from your bank, you still should not share your PIN. Banks will never ask for your PIN over the internet or by phone. Out of an abundance of caution, TransLink is offering all affected individuals who wrote checks for TaxiSavers with 2 years of complimentary credit monitoring and fraud protection services through TransUnion. We wanted to provide you with a safeguard to help alleviate concerns you may have stemming from this incident. More details on how to register for credit monitoring and fraud protection services are included in the breach notification letter, along with your unique code to register for this free service. If you're watching the session today, it's likely you or someone you know has received a breach notification letter in the mail and have concerns. On a personal level, I wanted you to know that we understand how you are feeling, as many of us at TransLink have also been personally affected by the incident. I received my own breach notification letter previously in the mail confirming that my sensitive personal information had been accessed. And even though I've been closely involved in this incident, I was still unnerved to hold the letter in my own hands. And although we can't undo this incident, what we can do is answer your questions, address your concerns, and provide you with some expert advice on what to do next. So to talk more about some of the steps you can take to protect yourself, along with the importance of credit monitoring services, we'll now go to a video conversation between TransLink spokesperson Jill Drews and cybersecurity expert Danny Timmins.
Welcome, Danny. Danny is a leading national cybersecurity expert with MNP, one of the largest business advisory firms in the country. And he's here today to share with us some tips on how we can avoid becoming victim to some of these cyber criminal activities. Welcome again, Danny.
Thank you very much, Jill, and thank the TransLink team for having me speak on I consider a really important topic. So today, as you mentioned, my role is national leader of a cybersecurity team with MNP. I've been in the information technology business for about 30 years, and about 20 of those years on the cybersecurity side. I'm doing this as a favor for a friend at TransLink, and however, I'm not doing any services or affiliated with TransLink today, if anybody wanted to know that.
Well, we're really excited to hear some of your insights. So let's just talk about the basics first. What is a cyber attack and why are these becoming more common?
It's a really great question, and I'm going to break it up into a couple of segments. So basically, there are two ways cyber attacks happen today. One is hacking. So hacking, you've probably heard of hackers. Read that on the news, or you've heard it on the radio. It's typically somebody who's what we call exploiting a vulnerability. I know those are big words, but I know most of us, if you have a computer or a phone, there's updates that are driven on those devices, and those updates often have security patches. And those patches are there to take care of those vulnerabilities. And often both people and companies don't patch well their vulnerabilities. And so what happens is hackers are looking for those types of vulnerabilities to try to get into your network, your computers. And so that's hacking. So that's basically how it happens. The other way is social engineering. Social engineering is basically means someone is trying to trick you into doing something that you think is okay. It could be, as an example, sending what we call a phishing email. So a phishing email is basically somebody sending you an email that's trying to trick you to do something. And they're going to ask you maybe to click on a link. They may ask you for your username and password. It could happen over the phone. The term is phishing, but it's basically somebody trying to trick you over the phone. Again, they're trying to ask you for details that you probably shouldn't be giving out. There's also what we call smishing, which is texting. So if somebody is texting over the phone, some people may receive a text and they answer to it when they shouldn't. You've probably heard of things like ransomware. So ransomware is a type of social engineering attack typically. So ransomware usually happens through a phishing email often, where someone clicks on a link and that inside of that link, unbeknownst to the person, it actually downloads something to their computer. And at that point, it's executed and then the adversary can do what they want. So they can actually execute on that payload that happens within the computer, and they can take over the network. They can lock out computers. And ransomware has been happening a lot over the last 5 years. And many major businesses and organizations across the world have fallen victim to this type of attack. Recently, I don't know if you've heard in the news about JBS, Colonial Pipeline, Home Depot, Canadian government, CRA, many municipalities. Today, MNP is working on 6 cyber breaches alone. We're today, right now. Go 2 months ago, we were working on another 6 types of cyber breaches. So most people don't hear about it on the news because most of them are not publicly driven to, say, the newspaper. So it happens a lot. The goal almost always is for profit. And the cyber attacks continue to rise because there's money to be made. So we all need to be very diligent in when receiving emails or phone calls and giving out our personal information to anyone.
Thanks. So what can we do to be diligent? What should we be aware of? And what do we need to look out for when we're navigating this space?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Jill. One of the things I always say is if you're aware of something that doesn't seem right, it's probably not right. So if your gut, a lot of times people say, well, go with your gut. Really, in this situation, I say go with your gut. So if you're feeling like, well, that doesn't make sense to me, well, then don't act on it and don't maybe give that person the information that they're asking for. So other areas of maybe keep an eye out for changes in your bank account or your credit card statements, unknowing amounts that you may not have seen before, you're not sure, address changes, you haven't received, your mail for a while, and you're not sure why. You could get a call from a creditor. And they may be asking you for, hey, you submitted this application, we just want to check into it. So that right away should make you want to look into it to whatever that institution is. Beware of phone calls from financial institutions, government agencies, and others that are asking you for things that just don't make sense to you. So it could be as an example, don't give out your personal information to someone who's calling or emailing you, like your PIN or your password. Tell them you will call them back. Ask them for their name and extension. Then look up the number on your own and then call them directly and see if it's real. Do not accept the number they give you because it's probably not the correct number for that institution. Again, if something doesn't seem right, call the institution right away and see for yourself if everything is okay. There's a couple of tidbits in there.
Yeah, there's a couple tips already, but is there more we can do to protect ourselves? In advance of anyone giving us these phone calls, what can we do to avoid this entirely?
Yeah, no, it's thanks, Jill. Yeah, so some of it is a little repetitive, but it really, I like to kind of go over things. So be vigilant about protecting your personal information. Always consider your personal information very important, and you should always verify whoever you're going to give that out to, no matter if it's through email, through a phone call, or through any other means. Be suspicious of anyone who calls you randomly and claims to be a trusted source, like a bank, like Census Canada or Canada Revenue Agency. We know that they exist and we know that they're real. Now, they will call, but they're not going to ask you for personal information. They typically never would ask you for that kind of stuff. And if somebody calls you and you feel it's not real, you can report it to the institution. So if you're like, okay, I should call, somebody called me from the CRA, they say they're from the CRA, I should call the CRA and find out if it's real first off, and I should just let them know because I don't think it's real. It's important because you might stop somebody else from falling for that particular type of social engineering attack or that type, or to be a victim. Check your bank statements if you don't recognize, like I was mentioning, a charge, or if you contact your bank immediately. And another option is sign up for credit monitoring. That's an option that some people can if you have the ability to do so.
And TransLink is going to be offering some free credit monitoring services. So can you explain a little bit about what credit monitoring can do to protect us?
Well, that's great. First off, that you're going to be providing that, because it's not perfect, because they can't stop somebody calling you and trying to get that information. But what they can do is they can monitor for things that you may not be aware of. Now, all of them have different packages, but I'll kind of walk through a couple of things. If an institution has inquired on your credit report, so if somebody has actually called a financial institution and said, okay, hey, how about this person? They're applying for something, that will show up more than likely. If someone's applying for a credit card or credit in your name, that will show up. New accounts opened up in your name, balances and payments on your credit products, address changes, just to name a few. There's a whole bunch of things that you would be able to get out of that credit monitoring, but you still got to make sure that you don't give any information to somebody who's calling you who you're not verifying that they're the real deal.
That's some good advice, Danny. This group in particular includes many seniors and persons with disabilities. Is there anything specific to this group that we should know about before we sign off?
Yeah, no, thanks for this question, because, we are all trusting as humans. It's a natural thing to be trusting, and we count on people all the time, and we really do. And we expect them to do the right thing, and especially seniors and those with disabilities, they are counting on people to help them and do the right thing. And I know, as an example, my father, he calls me every few months, and well, we talk more often than that, but on this particular subject, he'll call me and something to discuss something that hasn't gone right. So people have tricked him in the past, and for something where he thought he didn't want to call me because he thought he didn't want to disrupt me. And he did get tricked by them, and it happens to real people. So my advice to him is no different to my advice to you and to others, out there. And I try to keep it simple. Don't give your personal information over the phone. Don't give even over email, unless you verify that they are who they are. So that's really important to make sure of. So when someone has reached out to you by phone, as an example, just get their name and extension if they'll give it to you. And often what you'll find is they will not give it to you, so you'll know they're not real. So no bank or no government institution is not willing to give you their name and extension. And so right there and then, if you ask for that, a lot of times they'll just click and hang up the phone. They will likely give you a number, but don't accept that number, because that number is probably not real. Or it's a real number, but not to that institution. So find out what the number is on your own, and then call that institution if you still feel that it might be something you need to do. Same idea on email. If you have email, don't give out any details that you feel uncomfortable with. Call the institution and verify that email that they're asking for information is real. So more than likely, in all those institutions we talked about already, will likely never ask you to send them personal information over email, or even ask you for stuff over the phone. So lastly, most importantly, don't feel like you're dumb in asking questions. There are no dumb questions. And that's what happened to my father, in a sense. He didn't really want to ask me because he felt, I felt uncomfortable about asking me something. And I said to him, every question's a good question. And so there's no dumb questions. You have the right to call an institution at any time, because you're dealing with them and you're able to ask those questions. And so if you feel something is wrong, call them and verify for yourself to make sure that what you're doing is not going to cause you harm. So so thank you, Jill, and the team. Hope those thoughts will help people.
Great. Thanks, Danny. That's great advice. And thank you again for taking the time to share it with us.
You're very welcome.
Thanks once again to Danny for taking the time to share his insights with us, including the steps we can all take to protect ourselves in response to this cyber attack, and to interim CEO Gigi Chen Ko for her remarks. We've now reached the final portion of today's session, which is the Q&A, where we will try to answer some of the most common questions you may have. To help moderate the Q&A, I'll turn it back to Jill Drews, TransLink spokesperson. Over to you, Jill.
Thanks very much, Kathy. So as a reminder, we're going to try now to address some of the questions that you may have, the most common ones that might be top of mind. So I'll read each question and then I'll direct it to the person who is best suited to answer it for you. In addition to Kathy Pereira, Director of Access Transit Service Delivery for Coast Mountain Bus Company, on the call to answer the questions, we also have TransLink's Interim General Counsel and Corporate Secretary, Jennifer Breeze, and TransLink's Chief Information Officer, Kurt Pregler. But I'd like both of our speakers to turn their videos on now, please, for the Q&A session. We'll begin. Great. So the first question goes to Kathy. Kathy, if you're not a TransLink TaxiSaver customer, why might you receive a letter?
Thanks, Jill. The person who wrote the personal check is not always the customer in our Access Transit program. In some instances, it's a family member, a friend, a loved one, or a care provider of a customer who wrote the check. If you wrote a check on behalf of a TaxiSaver customer, it's your information that was accessed.
So Kathy, why does TransLink keep copies of these checks? I mean, some of these checks are from quite a long time ago.
Right. As part of a normal accounting and auditing process, records are maintained and stored in restricted folders for accounting staff for a minimum of 7 years. Records of TaxiSaver purchasers were included in this process, and scanned copies are maintained and stored in a restricted folder for the accounting staff.
Right. So if there's some people out there who don't want to send checks anymore, is there another way that they can pay for their TaxiSavers?
Most customers purchase TaxiSavers through the mail, and this method of payment is exclusively by check. However, Fair Dealer walk-in centers take cash, debit, and credit.
So Kathy, what other personal information of mine might TransLink keep on record if I'm a member of this program?
If you wrote a check for an Access Transit customer, the only information TransLink holds is whatever is printed on the personal check. TransLink does not record this information in any way separately from the check itself. If you're an Access Transit customer, TransLink will have your application on file in a restricted folder. As the investigation into what the attackers accessed in the cyber attack is now complete, I can confirm that this file was not accessed by the cyber incident.
Okay, I have a question for Jennifer Breeze now. Jennifer, why did it take so long to find out that this file had been accessed?
Thanks for the question, Jill. So TransLink moved quickly to launch an investigation into the cyber attack immediately after it was detected. It has been a painstaking and time-intensive process as network systems have come back online for us to review and identify all of the sensitive personal information in the files that were accessed by the cyber attackers. The manual review that we've done involves a line-by-line review process extracting all sensitive personal information for the purposes of the individual breach notices. We recently discovered this group has been affected and we're notifying you as quickly as possible. The privacy investigation into the incident is now complete and we don't anticipate any new breach notifications after these letters are distributed.
Okay, back to Kathy now. Kathy, what if the mailing address for the customer isn't current? How can it be updated?
If you wrote a check for TaxiSavers for yourself or on behalf of someone else and you did not receive a breach notification letter, please email cyberincident@translink.ca to let us know. Please include in your email your name as it appeared on your check and your current address. Please also include your handy card number, or if you're not a customer, the customer's name and their handy card number. Upon receipt of your email, if we confirm that you were an impacted individual, we'll send you a new breach notification letter to your updated mailing address. This could take about 10 to 15 days.
Okay, Kathy, so now that we know what's happened, should I be changing my banking information if my check was involved?
We ask that you discuss these concerns with your bank and follow their recommendations.
Right, okay, back to Jennifer now. Jennifer, if the risk of financial harm here is relatively low, why are you offering the credit monitoring service?
TransLink is offering credit monitoring and fraud protection services out of an abundance of caution. We do recommend that you take advantage of the offer if you haven't, and as it will help protect you in the case of identity theft, no matter where the source of the risk has come from.
No. Now we have a couple questions for Kurt Pregler, our Chief Information Officer. Kurt, how could this happen to a company like TransLink? You'd assume there would be some security measures already in place.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Instances of cybercrime are on the rise globally. The fact that TransLink became a victim despite maintaining a robust security program is evidence of how sophisticated these criminals are. Even though we have many security measures in place to protect our systems and data, due to how the attack was executed, data encryption would actually not have prevented the attackers from breaking through. Prior to the attack, we actually had several projects that were planned to begin in 2021. We'll continue to pursue those projects, and we'll also be making additional investments as well to further strengthen our safeguards and protect the security and confidentiality of personal information. We've already begun to review our existing policies, practices, training programs, and physical and technical security measures. And we will continue to look for opportunities to further strengthen and improve our physical and technical security.
So you've mentioned that you are looking at ways to ensure this doesn't happen again, but how can we trust TransLink to keep personal information safe going forward?
Yeah, well, TransLink takes the personal security or the security of personal information in our care very seriously. We are continually investing in our security measures, particularly as the cybersecurity threats continue to evolve. We continue to review our existing policies, practices, training programs, and our physical and technical security measures with a view and a continued commitment to ensuring continuous improvement. Additionally, we are also looking at ways to work with both of our business peers to share lessons learned and best practices to help prevent them from falling victim to future cyber attacks.
Okay, thanks, Kurt. And thanks to Jennifer Breeze as well and Kathy. That's the end of our Q&A portion, and I'll turn it back over to Kathy.
Thanks, Jill. And thanks for leading us through the Q&A session. This brings us to the conclusion of our virtual info session. If you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to contact our team by emailing cyberincident@translink.ca or calling our toll-free incident response center at 1-855-731-3288. Thanks again for tuning in.